Hello and welcome to another instructional design micro lesson. In this lesson, we'll take a look at a couple of tricks to do with shapes inside of Microsoft PowerPoint. So I'm going to go straight to my edit mode in PowerPoint. And all of these features that I'm going to show you have to do with using a couple of different shapes and doing something a little bit different with them. So for shape union, after selecting these two objects, I'm going to go to the shape format ribbon, select merge shapes, and I'm going to select union. Now I have right there one object now that started out as two, and this may seem like, okay, well, what's the use in that? Well, if you have two objects and you don't like one of the objects, like let's say you like the idea about using this object for some sort of flow chart to show basically step one and then step two and step three, but you just don't like it. It's a little bit boring. You can pick it up a notch by taking another shape. Let's say I want that to be the ending. And I'm going to select both of these objects. I'm going to make sure that the height of the objects is the same. And then I'm going to select and make sure that they're aligned. So I'll align the top. In this case, you could align the top or the bottom. And now watch what happens when I select merge shapes here. And now I have a better object. Okay. And within this object itself, I can type in text if I want. A little difficult to see that text unless I make it a different color. And there I've got my different shape with text inside, and maybe that's going to work a little bit better for me. I can play around with different objects as well. Let's say I want to put in a little better shape over here, and it looks like I'm going to have to maybe make that a little bit thicker to make this thing work for me, and maybe I'll have to make it a little bit wider as well. Let's see, again, I can play around with this a lot. I'll select those, make the alignment top, and then I'll select merge shapes, union. And that didn't come out so well, but I could play around with that until it did come out okay. So let's move on to shape combine. Shape combine, I'll use the same sort of starting point. If I select two objects, go to shape format, merge shape, select combine, that's what I get. Well, is that very exciting? Maybe not really. But if I have a screenshot, and many of you I'm sure work with screenshots when you're putting together presentations or lessons inside of PowerPoint, and then I come over here to my shapes and I'm going to select a square. What I can do is I can do something a little bit funky with doing a knockout shadow using shape combine. So I'm going to draw a square over my screen capture, and I'm going to change the fill on that to just dark black. And then I'm going to go into the properties for it, and I'm going to make the transparency something around 60 or 70%, maybe. I like 70. And you can see I get now a view of this, but let's say that I want to highlight the top part or the middle part or whatever else that you want to highlight here. Well, watch how easy this one is. So I'm going to come over here to my objects once again. Any object that you want, let's use a circle, oval, shape, and put that on top of whatever area that you want to emphasize. So now select one, select the other, and then I'm going to come in here to merge shapes, and I'm going to select combine. And lo and behold, I've got a little knockout shadow there that highlights that area. So shape combine works well. I'm going to give you one warning though. If you select in a different order, so if I select my highlight area first and then the overall shadow area second, the results are going to be different. So if I select that, you can see basically it's converted over to the first object that I've clicked. And so it is important the order that you select when you're going through this routine. But it is a really nice effect. It's a very simple effect to use. There was another way to do this way back when with Office 2003, 2010, 2007, but this is certainly much easier. Okay, shape fragment, one of my favorites. It's actually not my favorite. I've got to admit, as I go down this list, it gets less and less simple to find uses for some of these things. So shape fragment, though, again, I'll start off just selecting two objects, shape format, merge shape, go into fragment. Okay, what did it do? I'm not sure. Nothing, I guess. Oh, wait a minute. It took a fragment. Now I have a fragment over there. Look what I've got with this one. Look what I've got with this one. So honestly, for getting certain shapes, the fragment does work well. You have to play with it a little bit more to try to figure out, okay, wait, if I have these two objects, what sort of fragments am I going to wind up with? But it can be handy. So if I use this example, let's see, I was playing around with this earlier, and then I go into merge shape, fragment, the object that I wind up with didn't quite turn out the way that I wanted. And I'm going to Control Z back to there and move that over just a little bit. Let me try that one more time. Merge shapes, fragment. Oh, and there's the object I wanted. Okay. It's kind of silly, but this may be the sort of object that maybe you want out of this. And fragment may give you that and then some. So the other part of fragment, by the way, if I select merge objects and I've got three different objects there, I wind up with a whole big mess of objects over here. This one looks like that. This one looks like this. And predicting which one of these is going to be what afterwards, it's a little tricky to figure out exactly what you're going to wind up with and how it's going to work for you. But again, for the right situation, fragment might be a helpful thing to have. Shape intersect. Again, it's a little bit tricky, but the basic premise of it is actually pretty simple. So I'm going to select again two objects, shape, merge shapes, and I'll come down to intersect, and I wind up with one piece. Okay, and the basic thing between there and the fragment is with fragment you wind up with all the different fragments. Here you're just going to wind up with the one in the middle. Okay, so basically the intersect of two objects or three objects is what you're going to wind up with. And again, as you get into different layers of complication, this one was pretty simple to kind of figure out what it was going to be. But then I threw together one with a square behind it. And now this one turned out to be that, who would have guessed? And then this one threw a triangle behind the two ovals. And this one wound up being that. I think I did that wrong, didn't I? Got to select all three of those. Shape format, merge shapes, intersection. Yes. Okay. So again, the more complex you make this, I think the results are going to be a little bit more complex. But again, shape intersect by itself might get you the results maybe that you want. Okay, and the final one is, again, fairly interesting, fairly useful, hopefully, is shape subtract. So I'm going to go once again through that pathway. Shape format, merge shapes, let's do a subtract, and there I've got my subtract. Okay, the one trick to shape subtract, and this might be, again, a handy one for you, is it's going to be dependent on which order you select these objects. And by the way, all of these, most of these, are a little sensitive to the order that you select these objects. So I just selected my rectangle first and then my oval. And now let's do a shape subtract. Whoops. Shape subtract. And I wind up with the same thing. Okay, now let's select the oval first and then the rectangle. And let's go in and let's do a subtract. Guess what? There you go. Much different, right? And then as I go through this, if I select all of these at once, make sure I grab that triangle at the bottom, and I do a shape subtract, I wind up with some pretty interesting things. And now I'll select them one at a time, shape subtract, and I wind up with something very different. Let's go backwards in the selection process of these objects, and I wind up with that. And it's up to you for where you take it from here. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you at the next micro lesson.